Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. What about yours? Show me your audio.
Can you see it? I'm revealing my audio.
Ooh, it's so large.
You're welcome.
The audio. The way that you present your audio.
It's the lighting.
Welcome to VCR, a vintage cinema rewind. We're bringing old movies to new viewers.
We're a couple of meat popsicles. I'm Jason.
And I'm Blake.
And we're getting into The Fifth Element.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tribute to Bruce Willis. Unless you're living under a rock at this point, you've heard the news that Bruce Willis has taken a step back from acting right now to deal with his health issues.
Yeah, he's had a phenomenal career, and everyone, he's a well-loved actor, and it sucks that he's retiring for such a shitty reason. It sucks that he's going through that.
Yeah, I'd never heard of aphasia before all of this news broke, and just reading about it is scary.
Yeah. And to see it happen to someone that's so big and has had this crazy career, it's pretty harrowing.
Yeah, for sure. At the end of the day, we're all human, so we're all subject to the same illnesses, basically.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Bruce Willis, with all of the money he's got, is getting the best care possible, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely a scary one. Any brain sort of issues or something that absolutely terrifies me.
Yeah, we don't know that much about the brain, and so he's losing his speech cognition, and so he might not be able to understand language anymore, or he won't be able to process it. It's pretty scary. I don't know if that's what we want to lead into with this podcast, but that's what's happening.
Well, we're paying a tribute to Bruce Willis. So we're doing The Fifth Element because we were planning on doing an action movie anyway, and that kind of slots into there. We could have done Die Hard maybe as well, but Jess's argument was, why would you do Die Hard right now? Because it's a Christmas movie, and I agree with that.
That's the main argument.
Yeah.
Anyone would make that argument, yes.
Yeah. It's still a fantastic movie, and you could watch it at any point in the year, but it is a Christmas movie, and I will die on that hill.
You'll die hard on that hill.
I will die so hard on that hill. I will live free, or I will die hard on that hill. Yeah, so we're doing The Fifth Element from 1997. Do you want to talk through plot?
Yeah, so in The Fifth Element, we're delving into a campy, futuristic 23rd century world that is threatened by evil. Ancient aliens return to Earth to save the world, but are attacked and lose the stones needed to power up the fifth element, which is a perfect being that will destroy the evil. Corbin Dallas is a badass former commando turned cab driver who must save the perfect being and the world. He's racing against the evil corporation Zorg and its CEO, I guess, the head guy of Zorg.
Yeah.
And he wants the stones. He's trying to sell it to this pure evil being that will destroy everything. And so everything's a little over the top, but very comedic and action-packed.
Yeah, and only Bruce Willis has the stones to save the day.
Yeah.
The way you said it in the plot there, I started chuckling to myself.
That's fair.
I had to make that innuendo.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point of this, is that he's just over-the-top badass.
Yeah. Well, and that's the movie in a nutshell. It's just over-the-top everything.
Yeah.
Everything's just taken to an extreme, turned up to 11. Like you said, it's the evil is what we're combating here, and it's literally evil, in the most literal sense, like
a planet-sized ball of evil.
Yes, there's no other description beyond that. We don't really get much lore into what the evil is. It's just it's evil and it's coming.
Yeah, and the ancient beings have been coming back to Earth every 5,000 years to do this again over and over, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the evil, these ancient aliens, they're over the top ancient alien looking, and they're just huge hulking masses of futury metal.
Yeah.
So we have them being over the top ancient aliens, and then we have the evil guy. He's just ridiculously dumb evil.
Yeah.
Or not the evil guy, just the villain.
Zorg.
Yeah, Zorg the villain.
Yeah, so let's talk characters, because you're segueing into it
Yeah,
anyway.
I am.
So why don't we start with the main villain, or the villain, the adjacent to the main villain, because evil is the main villain.
Yeah.
But Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg, or better known as Zorg, in the film, he's like you said, he's almost cartoonish in his badness. Basically, his whole motive is to just create chaos. He loves living in chaos, basically.
Yeah.
We see him fire 1 million people, basically just because he only had to let go of like 500,000 to create kind of a little bit more chaos, but he decided to fire an extra 500,000 because why not?
Which the main character, Dallas, is actually one of the people who's fired.
Yeah, it's funny because... And we'll get into this, I think, when we get to who is this movie for. But the movie doesn't take itself seriously. The lore has depth and no depth to it at the exact same time. But you can't argue that the fact that the movie it's fairly tight in the way that references come back, and a lot of things are connected really well throughout the movie.
Yes, and Zorg is one of those things. Just trying to bring it back to Zorg.
I don't know.
I lost it.
I don't know. I lost it probably too. But anyway, so Zorg is played by Gary Oldman. And I think Gary Oldman's an actor who kind of flies under the radar a little bit because of how into a character he gets. You sometimes forget who Gary Oldman is.
Yeah, he's so much of a chameleon that he just becomes the part, and he's usually transformed so much that you can't really tell. And this is another example of where he nails that. Yeah,
I don't think that anyone else could play the villain the way he played it.
Yeah.
And that for me is one of the highlights of the film, is just how cartoonishly evil he is, and just how, like, he looks like he's having fun while he's doing it. Yeah. I have a note on that later, though, in Legacy. But Gary Oldman, you might know from the Dark Knight series, playing Commissioner Gordon. He was also in The Road as the main bad guy in there. I distinctly remember him in that as well.
Harry Potter as Sirius Black.
Yes, exactly. So, and think about how different each of those roles is. Like, Sirius Black, he's so into that character, like that's who I have in my mind when you say that.
Yeah.
Is him.
Yeah, when you read the books, it's him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Did I say The Darkest Hour as well?
I don't think so.
Yeah, he's in The Darkest Hour. He plays Winston Churchill, and like he's got like the whole bat suit on and everything, completely unrecognizable. I think he won awards for that as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, fantastic actor. I will say that this is maybe my favorite Gary Oldman portrayal. Because I don't know, I like the cartoonish evilness he's got going on.
Yeah, and like I've seen, before I watched this, I've seen that character as a meme. Like there's quite this is heavily referenced, I would say. I'll talk about that in a bit, but his character was just like a perfect campy futuristic villain. Like his hair and his wardrobe and everything.
Right.
And just the way he talked, it was all just so like mismatched, and everyone was kind of like a mashup of whatever they were supposed to be.
Yeah, there was a lot of interesting artistic decisions that are made throughout the film, like even right down to the clothing design. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
But let's save that for effects and filming. So let's go back to Bruce Willis playing Corbin Dallas. So Corbin Dallas is kind of a down on his luck taxi driver. He's ex-military. It's kind of alluded to that the reason why he's ex-military is related to maybe his ex-wife, and I think he kind of blames the military for the breakdown of his relationship with his ex-wife.
Yeah.
So, because he doesn't want to have anything to do with the military at all.
Yeah.
He would rather just be a bad taxi driver and just barely get by in life. Like he's pretty down, kicked to the curb at this point. And the way that Bruce Willis portrays this character is really great, because you do get the sense that he's just like at the end of his rope, but he's also comical in a sense. He's what am I looking for? He's like depressed while being funny somehow.
Yeah.
Like thinking back to when we watched When Harry Met Sally, he's kind of got that Harry kind of vibe to him a little bit.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So he retired 6 months ago, so maybe that's why he's like dealing with it okay. He's like, this is just temporary. I'm just being a cab driver for now.
Right.
Like he'll get back on his feet. I think he still has that optimism, and that's why he's like depressed but funny about it.
Right.
And so yeah, when the general comes to get him, he's like, give me a reason why you want me back. And the general's like, 3 reasons. 1, as a member of the elite special forces unit of the Federated Army, you're an expert in use of all major weapons and spacecraft needed for this mission. 2, of all the members of your unit, you're the most highly decorated. And the 3rd, of all the members of your unit, you're the only one left.
Nice.
So yeah, there's a lot of that well-placed comedy. Everything's well-placed.
And that's maybe where the shining points of this film is in the placement of some of that humor. So Bruce Willis, we've already talked a little bit about him, but you're going to know him from movies like The Sixth Sense, Pulp Fiction, the Die Hard series,
Armageddon.
Yeah, Bruce Willis, honestly, he's such a big action star at this point in time that you would almost have to be living under a rock to not know who Bruce Willis is. Yeah. He's one of my favorite actors, period. The Die Hard series is extremely important to me. Pulp Fiction probably bounces around my top 5 list, depending on when the last time I watched it, because every time I watched it, it just moves way back up again.
Yeah.
He was also in like 12 Monkeys, which is a great sci-fi film.
Phenomenal.
Underrated, probably, too.
So he's been in a lot of these amazing sci-fi action movies.
Yeah, Sin City.
Yeah.
Which is a complete tonal change from everything that we've talked about. Like that stands on its own like pedestal.
It's like at the top of noir films.
Yes.
Like, we've looked back at his career and he has a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And it's like a wave that he's been riding, and so it's nice to see, like, go back and see how many huge movies he was in.
Yeah, for sure. And I've seen so many of them at this point that it's always fun revisiting an old Bruce Willis movie.
And I think he was like the 8th most highest paid actor
probably
in the world.
In the 90s. And
it was,
2000s.
I think that was like in like 2015 or something. They said that, but yeah. So like he's made a huge impact on film.
Oh, absolutely. Like he's in part of the Expendables, so like to be in the Expendables team means that you are like one of the top action heroes of the last like 40 years, probably 50 years. Let's move on to our next character, Lilu, the 5th element. So Lilu is the center of the plot, essentially. She's an ancient being who, together with the other 4 elements, is supposed to save the world from evil. So Lilu's played by Milla Jovovich. Milla's kind of an interesting actor in that she's kind of cemented herself in these cult classic kind of films or like the sci-fi genre. She's most known for the Resident Evil series by a mile. Like that has become her series, and she's married to the director of that series as well. So she's very, very close to that series. Yeah. She's kind of had a really interesting life as well, because she's actually Ukrainian descent, born in Kiev. So kind of cool timeliness connection to everything going on. We could pay a little tribute to Ukraine and give a big ol' FU to Russia. Yep. Big ol' FU to Putin. But anyway, she also was at one point the highest paid model in the world in the early 2000s.
Wow.
Yeah. So very, very relevant person. And she plays the role pretty well as well. The writing for Lilu is maybe not the best at times.
So the way I looked at it, she was basically an over-the-top, because everybody's over the top.
Yes.
She's an over-the-top, like, foreigner. She annoyingly doesn't understand humans.
Right.
So, like, her lines are very just campy. Like, you would think that this supreme being would be, like, a super, like, peaceful and like intelligent person, but she's like a little kid.
Yeah, and she's like a tool, right? Yeah. Like she's a supreme being, but like she doesn't really do anything for herself at all. Like it basically Bruce Willis is the hero, the guy who's doing all the things basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that's maybe one of my critiques of the film is that Lilu is not a very deep character.
Yeah. No, it would have been cool if so she's in The Fourth Kind and The Fifth Element. It would have been great if she was in The Sixth Sense. They could have just had like
we have our Bruce Willis connection with that still, though.
So 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. So our next character that I want to talk about is Vito Cornelius, I want to say leader of the secret order of the priests who know about this evil.
Yeah, he's connected to the ancient aliens. And so the ancient aliens we see at the beginning of the movie, it's like 300 years before the setting of the movie, and the ancient aliens show back up to the pyramids, which are built to house the 4 stones. So we see there the order of this Cornelius.
Right.
They're almost like priests.
Yeah, they are priests.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And now that you say that too, I never really thought too hard about like the connection to Egypt with the aliens coming. Like this is probably like the aliens built the pyramids theory, right? In action, in film. Which
again, they went like over the top and used the pyramids and like yeah.
Which I mean that crops up in film here and there.
Yeah.
Vito Cornelius is played by Surian Home. And if that name doesn't immediately trigger anything for you, let's talk about his career. He played Bilbo Baggins in Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
Which...
Like Bilbo Baggins.
No way.
Not Frodo, but Bilbo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Complete transformation. Obviously, it was like a few decades after. No, it was...
No, it was
like
years. Like
a few years after.
Maybe they probably... I want to say that they filmed Lord of the Rings in like 1998, which is a year after this was released.
Wow, okay. This movie seems so much older than it really is.
Yeah.
It's like 25 years old.
It's 1997, so yeah, 25.
Yeah, wow.
Cool. And he's also in the movie Alien, which is one of my favorite horrors of all time. He plays the android. Have you seen the original Alien?
I have, but it's been a bit, so I don't remember.
Enough. He is an extremely important English actor in film and also in plays. He was in some really big productions in the UK. So our next character is Ruby Rhod, played by Chris Tucker. Ruby Rhod is like maybe the most flamboyant character we've seen in cinema ever.
Yeah.
He just plays like so outrageously outrageous. Like the best way I could describe him is think like Prince turned up a notch.
Yeah, and that's Prince turned down the role.
Yeah.
So I think that Prince turning down the role probably gave Chris Tucker a really good idea of where to go with this.
Yes.
And he ramped it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is pretty much one of the biggest movies that Chris Tucker is known for as well, his portrayal. And he was actually pretty scared about his portrayal because Bruce Willis even said, like, this is going to ruin your career, man. Like, I don't know why you agreed to do this.
Yeah, because, like, right before this, he was, like, in Friday.
Yeah, he's a stand-up comedian. He's a rising stand-up comedian in the 90s. He goes on to do Rush Hour, which is a very, very popular movie series. And he's just like complete transformation in this. Like you wouldn't put Chris Tucker of what I can picture Chris Tucker as Ruby Rhod. But what a crazy character though.
Yeah. And I've seen his character as a meme a bunch of times.
Oh, yeah.
It's like there's a lot of memes from this, but I think it might be because of the generation who watched this when it came out. Kind of like, I don't know, it was just so big for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's just such a memorable portrayal that it sticks in your mind because of how ridiculously outlandish it is.
Yeah. One person that really caught my eye, Tom Lister Jr.
Okay.
And he's the president.
Oh, yeah.
So I recognized him instantly because he's quite recognizable to look at. But he was in Friday as well with Chris Tucker.
I've never seen Friday. Have you?
It was a long time ago, but
okay.
yeah. The Dark Knight and Jackie Brown.
Right.
And he's just like this big, badass black guy with the slight eye thing. And he just looked so familiar that I was like, oh, that's, like, I've seen him before. And I've seen him in a lot, I feel like.
In terms of the writer and director behind this is Luc Besson, who is a French filmmaker. He has a really interesting career, and it's not something that you would connect the dots to necessarily, but nonetheless, I guess his biggest breakout movie was Leon the Professional, which also has Gary Oldman involved in it. And that's kind of an interesting movie because there's some controversy over the way that some relationships are portrayed in that, which is probably not unfair. He also recently did the movie Lucy with Scarlett Johansson, I believe.
Yep.
But bigger than those, or not even necessarily bigger than those, but bigger to mainstream audiences. He wrote Taken.
Yeah. That surprised me too.
Yeah, I was not expecting that, which is a movie that, while Liam Neeson was already a big actor, it put him in, like, that made him a household name.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely one of the biggest blockbuster action movies of the 2010s or whenever it came out. I think it was 2010s.
Yeah, like, he's kind of like their cultish, like, cult classic movies.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard of Nikita.
Mm-hmm.
He's a writer on that. Or he wrote that, and Leon the Professional. Lucy is kind of in that area because it wasn't that big of a mainstream success, I don't think.
It did moderately well. But I haven't seen it though.
Me neither.
What's really interesting about Luc Besson's connection to the film is that he actually was the writer of the film, and he started writing this as a teenager.
Wow.
He started writing this when he was 16. It was kind of intended to be a novel, just something. He was bored in rural France and just wanted something to fill his time, and so he dove into this, and then years later decided to revisit it and thought, like, there might be a movie here, because I don't think he ever actually published the novel, so it's just kind of his own internal creation.
When you look at most movies, especially like sci-fi movies, it's rare to see original ideas, original IP.
Yeah.
So he had this idea as a kid and then turned it into a movie. He didn't like write it before or anything like that. So he just developed this whole world, and that kind of makes fun of sci-fi movies, but is a great one in itself too. It's it's pretty crazy that he did that.
Yeah, and I want to talk as well about the co-writer, because he did have some assistance in adapting his own novel and coming up with the screenplay, Robert Mark Kamen. And that name didn't stand out to me originally. However, he also co-wrote Taken with Besson. He was the writer of the Karate Kid franchise.
The original?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. As well as the Transporter series.
Great series. I loved the Transporter series.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good movies. There's a lot of great action background going into this film. So I think not only is this a great tribute to Bruce Willis, we were hoping to get a good action movie, and I think this fits what we were going for with a good action film.
Yeah.
And on that note, let's talk who this movie is for. If you're a fan of Bruce Willis like I am, this is a must-see, because this is a really great portrayal. He kind of plays a similar character to his character in the Die Hard series, and he's got that really charming humor as well that he has in the Die Hard series. Yeah,
like the whole movie, they're kind of trying to make him like this macho guy. Like everything points to his macho-ness.
Yeah.
And it's almost like playing a joke about how macho those types of characters are.
Yeah.
So it's like looking at his Die Hard character and then ramping it up in this world.
Well, while also not taking himself too seriously either.
That's
because you could contrast that to like an Arnold Schwarzenegger portrayal. Like think about Predator, like where he's like the super macho man and he's so serious all the time. Yeah. Whereas like this is a lot more of a humble portrayal of the action hero.
Yeah.
This is all, like I said before, this is also like for me, a career high for Gary Oldman, who has just a whole list of career highs. But I really, really enjoy Zorg, the character, even though his reasoning, his logic behind everything just doesn't really make sense. And I mean, this is a movie where you don't think too hard about it. At any point in time, you should not think too hard about it. But I really enjoy it. And again, Milla Jovovich, if you're a fan of her movies and the genres that she plays, like, this is perfectly typecast in what she does and what she does best.
Yeah. It's action, it's sci-fi, it's comedy. None of it takes itself seriously,
right.
And it's all very fun.
Yeah. I wrote at one point, this movie feels like Dune if you gutted, like, the lore to the bare bones and then, like, ramped up the comedy and, like, not taking itself seriously aspects.
Yeah, and I don't know that anybody had done that yet at this point in film history in, like, the 90s, because there was a lot of serious movies coming out, like even look at another Bruce Willis, like Armageddon. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good comedy in that, but it's not the central character, or it's not the central theme.
Yeah, it's more drama.
Yeah,
it's definitely more dramatic.
But this is like Armageddon flopped, or like flipped. It's like all comedy and then has action elements and everything.
Right. Now, this movie does follow Total Recall, which I think had comedy elements to it. I actually have never seen Total Recall.
I have. It had some comedy elements, but not. Again, it was like more serious.
Yeah, and probably Arnold's portrayal was a much more serious action hero at that point as well. But yeah, there's connection there. So if you like that and you haven't seen this, like, you could maybe enjoy this. I think if you're a fan of space operas or cyberpunk in general, especially because of, again, how the costumes are created, it's a really interesting look at what the future might bring. Now, we as humans are not great at predicting the future, so I imagine it's not going to be like this, but it makes you reminisce to something like Blade Runner and the way the costume and the world is designed.
You know what? I think this is more accurate because it's kind of making fun of how all this excess is a little bit comedic. Like how crazy Chris Tucker's character is. Seems like we could be on that direction because he's just like at the top and just over the top.
Right.
And he's just so rich that like nothing, like he controls like everything in that whole like radio world, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And like the whole consumerism part of the movie is really fitting. And that's a lot of what the movie is actually at its core is a commentary on humanity. There's some commentary on war and hate as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too serious though.
No, never too serious. Like, there's little points here and there of seriousness, but it's a very silly movie.
Yeah.
That's most of who I had for who's going to enjoy this. Like, if you like cult movies, like cult comedies or cult, like, classics, 90s movies, like, you're going to enjoy this one as well. My dad, I've never talked to him about it, but I think my dad really enjoys this one because growing up, I remember this movie being on TV fairly frequently, and I remember he had this on every time it was on TV.
Yeah, like if he was flicking through the channels and it was on, he'd be like, "Let's watch the rest of this."
Yeah,
yeah.
It was kind of a movie where I think I probably had seen it. I've probably seen parts of it like a dozen times, but this is maybe my first time watching it from start to finish in a long time, and. You know, it because of how flimsy some of the lore is, it's a movie that you can kind of hop into partway through and just kind of enjoy.
Yeah. It's all about the characters and the silliness and the comedy, not so much the sci-fi lore, like the realism or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you're a fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I think you would enjoy this as well. The humor's kind of there a bit. To
me, this is almost like a Seinfeld situation again.
Right.
Where there was a lot of things that were kind of original in this movie, and like the comedy fit that time. And now like the Guardians of the Galaxy could be as silly and funny and serious and like what it is because of movies like The Fifth Element.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it paves the way for that.
Yeah.
And so looking back, if you're a fan of that genre and that type of humor, I think you're going to enjoy this.
Yeah.
In terms of when to watch, for me, we watched it about midway through the week, and the length of it is just over 2 hours, so it's kind of bordering on a little lengthy for a middle of the week kind of movie. I think this one could fit into your Friday night, like late pulp kind of film.
Yeah, it's a Friday night right after dinner, I think, before you might like settle down and watch a real movie, like a real serious movie, but like Friday night, if you had like kind of a long week and you just want to throw something on that's light and funny and kind of in that sci-fi area,
Yeah.
it's a good Friday night movie, I think.
And you know what? Just thinking as well, because I said that my dad watched this movie a bunch of times too. This is probably also a Sunday afternoon. Lay on the couch and have like a nice little nap partway through the movie.
Yeah. Or you wake up and it's halfway through. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't watched a movie on a Sunday afternoon for a while, but I kind of miss doing that a little bit. I just don't have time right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, my dad might have been onto something there.
Yeah.
Where to watch? It's on Netflix until April 30th, so you've got just under a month now to get to it before it inevitably moves somewhere else.
Yeah,
I don't know
as
where,
they do.
but yeah. I think you and I are going to maybe have conflicting arguments about whether or not you should watch it or not.
It's so hard because we both love movies so much that there are other movies that I would recommend above it, but it does fit a certain niche that it's at the top of.
Right. Do you want to talk about that before we get into the spoiler stuff and say, like, because we've talked about I guess we've already talked about who this movie is for.
Yeah.
But let's talk about, like, whether or not we slap a recommendation on it. Because I think you're right. I think this does fit a niche type of person to watch this. Although I will say that Jess did enjoy it with me. Like, at the end, she kind of laughed and went, that was a silly movie. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's Annabelle's reaction, too. Like, like, it wasn't a phenomenal, like, you'll remember it forever movie, but you'll remember parts of it that were funny.
And portrayals.
And the characters, yeah. So, like, yeah, it fits somewhere in between good and great, but for me, it's closer to just good.
Right. And that's fair. And, like, I could probably be okay with that as well, because I'm a big fan of the sci-fi genre, and like, you're not going to walk out of this movie like you walked out of The Last Jedi, necessarily. You got punched in the gut.
Yeah.
But it's a very different look on what the sci-fi genre has done in the past. And that's actually something that Besson was going for when he created the film. He actually specifically went out of his way to say, I want bright, lit up, like, big rooms, big set pieces. I don't want, like, the sci-fi of the past where it's dark and it's gloomy, like the Alien series, like Star Wars, like stuff like that. So he was definitely going for a different look on the sci-fi genre, and I think that's really great to explore different ideas within a genre.
I saw a very great comparison where Scream was a great horror slasher film, but it was basically making fun of all the previous slasher films. This is doing that for the action genre.
Yeah, the action space opera genre, probably mix up of the two.
Yeah. So I think that's where it succeeds, but it's not necessarily something that you have to watch. Like, I'm not gonna put this on like a top 10 list unless it's very niche.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. Like, it's not a top 10, but it's a movie that if I'm scrolling through Netflix, like, I might just turn it on because it's a Bruce Willis movie, and I'm a sucker for Bruce Willis.
Yeah. I enjoy so much his other movies where he's a bit more serious, and like I did enjoy this too, but like I'm less into the fun-loving type of movie.
Yeah,
like this isn't a type of movie that I would generally put on over its more serious, like, sci-fi cousin. I would rather watch the serious sci-fi.
Yeah, and I guess for me it kind of depends on the time of day and what I'm in the mood for, because like there are times when I prefer watching this over to watching like the original Star Wars movie, just because you have to be in a certain mindset to be watching.
You know what?
Right?
I could watch serious sci-fi all the time, anytime, and so this is something that I would put on when I want to watch sci-fi, but I know Annabelle does not.
That's a great point.
That's my perfect movie for that situation, so it does fit in somewhere.
I think that's a great point because Jess enjoyed this movie a lot as well, and she's not necessarily a big sci-fi person. Cool. Yeah, I like that recommendation. So let's move into... Let's cut it off here.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It's like watching Spaceballs, too. Kind of. Like that's... So
Spaceballs
someone
is
who
pure
loves...
parody, though.
Yeah, but someone who loved Spaceballs would also enjoy this.
Yes,
For
I
sure.
agree with that take. Spaceballs is in full parody, whereas... This movie is not quite parody, but it's not quite like the serious sci-fi space opera that audiences have like really blown up in the last 10 years, 15 years at this point in time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's cut it off now. That was as spoiler-free as we can. If you haven't seen this movie yet, we've kind of already talked about why or where or when you might watch this. If you want to go check it out, go check it out, or just keep hanging out with us, and we're going to talk about some other fun stuff related to the movie.
Yep, let's do it.
All right, cool.
Aziz, light! That was a great little thing at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk themes really quickly. At its core, what the film is about is whether mankind is worth saving despite all the horrible things that we put ourselves through, which is a pretty existential debate and also probably pretty timeless. In terms of mankind, because we're always blowing ourselves the hell up, like right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is always stupid and unnecessary.
And there's the evil corporation.
Yeah.
That he makes like so many different gadgets but also weapons.
Yeah, so, I mean, at the end of the day, they all kind of relate back to that, whereas there's probably a lot of technology that we have today that we have to thank the U.S. military or something like that for, right? Yeah. So, yeah, like that's really the biggest theme here.
Yeah, and like a lot of like the excess that all comes with, like when we go to see the opera house.
Yeah, the capitalist side of things.
Yeah.
Right.
And what's his name?
Ruby Rod?
Ruby Rod. He's like, and here we are in the greatest opera house in the universe. It's based off the old opera house, but who gives a shit? Like,
yeah, like he's the pinnacle of
celebrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And everybody just swooning over him, even though he's like ridiculous and outlandish and like can be kind of a dick.
Yeah.
Like he's just kind of allowed to do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
He's like Justin Bieber of his time.
Something like that. Yeah.
There's the level conquers all theme here as well, which is a little bit shoehorned in, but it's really the only way that they could have ended it, I think. Yeah,
like they had to do the love connection where Bruce Willis falls in love with Lilu, and his love, like at the end, she's like, "Should I save everyone? I don't even know what love is. I'm just a tool. I'm a tool that is being used right now."
Yeah.
And he's like, "I love you," and then she's like, "Okay, I'll do it."
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, like that's the summary of the ending. Like
you did a really good job of summarizing the ending.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's not really too much else really for me wanting to dive into themes. Let's talk effects and filming, because this is probably the part that I'm most excited to talk about, because there's some really interesting stuff relating to the movie. So Bruce Willis actually took a pretty big pay cut up front to star in the film.
Huh.
He basically, him and Luc Besson had a meeting because he was up for the movie alongside Mel Gibson, and Mel Gibson turned it down. Luc Besson was like, "I don't think I can afford you." And Bruce Willis was like, "Well, let me read the script, and if I'm interested, we'll make the money thing work out." And he, after a few hours of reading the script, was like, "I'm in. I'm really interested in this script." And he was quoted later as saying, when they asked him, like, "Why did you take the pay cut?" He said, "Sometimes I just like to do it because they're fun."
Yeah. Which is a great how this whole movie is.
Yeah. And it's great that Bruce Willis can just have fun in film, and I think that's part of the reason that I'm going to miss Bruce Willis is because of like watching some of his portrayals and watching how much fun he has in them.
Yeah, yeah.
That's something that I'm gonna miss in future film. Ruby Rod was written specifically for Prince, who had turned it down because it was too feminine of a role for him.
Yeah, which is crazy to think of from what we kind of know about Prince. Like he was, he's an interesting character.
He's an enigma. On his own.
Yeah.
We've already talked about the clothing design a little bit, and I want to talk about that because the person that they brought in, his name was Jean-Paul Gaultier, who is a very famous fashion designer. Like, he designed every piece of clothing in the film.
Wow.
And he spent, apparently he spent a lot of detail. Like, there was something like 500 extras in the film, and he specifically, checked over all of the clothing himself personally for all of that. Very, very involved in that. And I think that adds a lot to the film, in my opinion. There's some really cool outfits throughout the film. The divine language, so the language that Lilu is speaking at the beginning and then kind of spruced out throughout, was something that Besson and Milla wrote together. They ended up with about 400 words in the divine language, and they could hold a conversation between the two of them in it. Yeah,
that's pretty crazy.
Filming.
Huh. Quite committed then.
yeah, very committed. Very committed if you know about the history of what happened between the two of them on set.
Oh, I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll talk about that really quickly. It's I don't necessarily want to get into this all the time, but it's kind of interesting is that at the time Luc Besson was together with the Blue Alien, the opera singer.
Yeah.
And then while they were filming this movie, he left her for Milla.
Wow.
And they got married and then divorced after 2 years.
Yeah, I looked at his marriage history. He's got 6 ex-wives and 4 kids with interspersed.
Yeah. Well, that's having wealth and creativity for you.
and he's French.
Yeah.
So I did see
what does that mean?
The French are very sexual. That's kind of that's kind of how he made Lilu. She was almost naked throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
And the futuristic clothing and everything, and the high life and everything, everyone was very sexualized.
Yes.
It's it's over the top sexuality throughout a lot of the elements of the movie. So you could possibly say that that's just the French inspiration.
That's fair. And this is actually considered a French film because it was produced outside of Hollywood in that sense. It's Luc Besson. At that point in time, it was actually the largest foreign film, the highest budget ever.
Wow.
Which is kind of cool. Cool little milestone.
The visual effects director, Mark Stetson, he's pretty huge. He did The Fifth Element, Lord of the Rings, he was also involved in.
Really?
Yeah. And Superman Returns.
There you go. 2 connections to the Lord of the Rings now. So if you like the Lord of the Rings, I guess you will like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and talking special effects, the main hall battle scene, kind of near to the end of the film, the explosions were real inside of that room, which was the largest indoor explosions for a film at that time. And it was actually pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
They almost burnt the whole thing down.
Wow.
So pretty wild. A lot of pyrotechnics went into that, a lot of choreography. So that scene alone is worth watching for film history.
Yeah, and the sets were amazing overall and everything.
The sets and design and everything.
Yeah.
Besson brought in a lot of specialists, like you were just saying with the special effects there. We've already talked about the fashion designer.
Yeah.
He had 2 comic book creators in as well, making set design choices, and they were the comic book writers that Besson actually was a big fan of as a teenager. So this itself was inspired by their works, and then they came on to help design this as well.
Because it was so inspired and inspiring. Yeah, that's pretty cool. The visual effects, just this Mark Stetson guy, he did a lot of miniatures, which are big for effects overall in film. He did Waterworld, Coneheads. Do you remember Coneheads?
Yeah.
Batman Returns, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. So there's some Honey, I Shrunk the Kid.
Rick Moranis.
Yeah, Rick Moranis.
Cool.
Edward Scissorhands.
I love finding the connections between our old episodes.
Yeah. Total Recall. This guy was in a lot.
Wow.
He
involved
in a lot. Escape from New York.
Oh!
Yeah.
I love Escape from New York.
That was like his second credited special effects thing in 1981.
That's such a good movie.
Yeah.
I love Escape from New York.
We should do it next.
Yeah. The New York scenes with all the cars and everything was a really interesting combination of all of the different special effects that they had at that time in the 90s. Like, this is the time period in the 90s where I generally say maybe avoid the special effects heavy films because that's a really
the
awkward
beginning
time
of CGI.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really
we synced
awkward
up there
time.
so much.
We
both said CGI at the exact same time. It was perfect.
Nice.
Yeah.
I will say though, for this film, for the most part, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's the combination of using everything together rather than just relying on the crutch of CGI as we see in other films in this era and going into the early to mid 2000s.
Yeah, like there are some visual effects issues, like the way the ancient aliens move, and like they're kind of big and clunky and not perfect,
right?
But it's kind of reminiscent of the original, like a
Doctor Who kind of alien.
Yeah. I was thinking just the way the aliens in Star Wars moved before the whole CGI rerun re-edit.
Right.
Clunky and they like move strangely, but besides that, with everything else that they did so well, like the sets and everything, it isn't that noticeable, and it's not taking itself too seriously. So
that's the other thing too. Like, and they did spend a lot of time. Like I said, it was kind of the combination of there was CGI, there was some live action involved there, and then there was also scale models. The models were all the buildings, and they actually put a lot of time and effort into getting those buildings looking like legitimate buildings in New York in the 2200s. It was a production team of 80 people spending 5 months to build all of that set piece. So yeah, that's pretty wild. Like, and like they were like, you know, making those city blocks. They were like adding like furniture and stuff so that you could see them while they were driving by places. Pretty wild.
Yeah, I think this was just a very great collaborative, like everyone was collaborating with the best of the best at all of those things. That collaborative nature really nailed down everything, I think. Yeah,
and everybody was out having fun. Like this wasn't a movie where anybody was taking things seriously.
Yeah,
I think that's where you're gonna like this film at the end of the day. And this is something that I didn't say before, but I did want to say when we were talking about who should watch this or who might enjoy this, is you can't go into this movie expecting a serious sci-fi film. You're just not going to have a good time if you go into that. And I've definitely gone into this film in the past with that mindset and not enjoyed it at that time as much as I did when Jess and I watched it together. Because going in this time, I knew that it was kind of a silly movie.
Yeah.
And that's where you're going to enjoy it more, is if you go in with that understanding.
Yeah, I think because I went in blind on this one, like besides the pop culture things that I know,
right?
I think that's where I didn't fully get into it, but I could see on a rerun that I might. This is a cool quote from Mark Stetson about how the visual effects kind of collaborative nature, and so I'll just get into that.
Sure.
He was talking about Luc Besson, and he said he has a pretty unusual style, especially then. If you looked at his films then, he explained to me, you know, Mark, I don't want to do those fancy panning around and seeing the whole world shots. I'd much rather set a camera looking down a street, have a cab rush towards me, and cut as it passes by, then cut to a reverse of it passing by, and construct my film that way. So there's a lot of single-centered, one-point perspective shots. So that's kind of what they based it all around, so that you feel more in the movie and not like watching the world. You're in the world.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting perspective because yeah, it's not like somewhere like the Matrix where we're like, we're moving through things and whipping around and stuff. Yeah, like that. It's that perspective of like I'm standing here and I'm watching the cab go by, and then maybe I'm over here now and I'm watching it from this perspective. That's interesting. Other Hollywood person who appears in the film, not in voice. At the beginning of the film, when Bruce Willis is talking to Finger on the phone about the taxi and getting the taxi back, that was Vin Diesel.
No way.
Yeah. Uncredited.
Shit.
That was Vin Diesel.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah,
I love Vin Diesel too. And Vin Diesel fits in with Bruce Willis as like they're kind of adjacent.
They're two bald action heroes.
And then Jason Statham,
right.
Which they're all kind of connected through different movies, but yeah.
The last point that I wanted to touch on was the fact that Bruce Willis and Gary Oldman are never really on screen together, which is a really cool way to frame a film where the main hero and the main villain are never together.
Yeah, they don't meet.
No.
Do they even know about each other, really?
Technically, probably not.
Yeah, because he knows the Zorg is using henchmen that are just horrible at their jobs. They're very dumb creatures, and they're very they're over the top henchmen.
Yeah.
Zorg uses them to try to mess up everything that Bruce Willis is doing, but Bruce Willis knows that it's these aliens that are causing all the problems.
Yeah.
And he fights them multiple times, but he doesn't know why or who's controlling them.
Yeah, and they're not even being controlled by like Zorg. Zorg's like screwed them over in a business deal earlier. Yeah. So they're they're doing their own thing with the stones and trying to get back at Zorg.
Yeah.
Zorg's trying to get the stones for himself. Has no idea that Bruce Willis is involved at all. Nobody knows that Lilu is the fifth element, really. Like she's just others. Around. Like the U.S. military doesn't really understand that. The
U.S. military recreated her.
Yeah, but they didn't know she was the fifth element, though.
No, yeah, you're right. Okay, they just knew that she was some kind of
alien,
perfect being.
Yeah, they knew she was an alien with
they did know because they consulted with the priest after they tried blowing up the evil planet, the evil.
But they didn't know that she specifically was the fifth element because she they made her and they were like, whoa, like all of this DNA is crazy and everything. Yeah. So we can't wait to meet this guy.
Yeah.
And understand what was happening at this point in time. But yeah, anyway, Bruce Willis has no idea that Zorg is a person who is also going for the stones. Has no idea that this is happening. It's kind of adjacent to. And it makes me think back to Indiana Jones, the first Indiana Jones movie, where Indiana Jones is actually not crucial to the plot himself and the whole path of the story.
Yeah.
Of Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's adjacent to that. They're not the same, but it makes me think back to something like that.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Okay, so let's talk score next. Because there's some really interesting mashups here. And something else to note. It's something that might tickle your brain a little bit, is that over 90% of the film has some sort of music or ambience playing throughout it. And that's something that Luc Besson specifically is known for, having a lot of music and trying to add a lot of tone through his musical choices. That's another thing that is interesting about the film, is because it's a really cool mashup of genres throughout. And that's all composed by Eric Serra, who's a French composer, obviously, who also is a frequent collaborator with Besson. He was also involved with Leon the Professional and Lucy.
Okay.
So he was kind of looking for all of those different shifts. Involved in the movie, there's some reggae, there's some 90s kind of tone vibes, the orchestral music, specifically the opera scene. We haven't talked too much about the opera scene yet, but I did want to talk about that a little bit because there is some interesting stuff going on with that scene. The tone of the music is shifting and evolving with where the plot is going through that scene, which is really cool. When she starts doing the
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
like that's when the action's starting to pick up, and like it's a really cool flow
Yeah.
basically between the music and what's going on in the film. As a side note, Bruce Willis and the rest of the audience weren't shown beforehand what the opera singer was going to look like coming
Okay.
out. So all of their reactions, like Bruce Willis's reaction of like genuine surprise, is like
Real.
actually genuine. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So like this isn't a film that has a score that you're going to remember necessarily, but I think it does add a lot to the film.
Yeah, there's not any like, it's not like a Star Wars theme song. It doesn't have any theme song really. It's just well done in the background.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So let's move into legacy,
Yeah.
because I got some pretty interesting stuff to talk about here. This film, when it came out, was extremely polarizing. You were basically in two camps. You either thought this was one of the best movies of 1997 or one of the worst.
Huh.
And that's shown even in the awards. Like it was nominated, I believe, for an Academy Awards for Best Sound Editing, and also ended up on the Razzies for one of the worst movies of 97.
Okay.
You were either, as a critic, you were either in one of two camps. You either
Yeah.
absolutely loved it or you hated it and didn't understand it. Interesting enough, like Roger Ebert at that time was like, I enjoyed it for what it was and I thought it was really fun, but it's not a good movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting take for
Yeah,
a really
it's-
famous movie critic.
I could see how like a big movie critic would like that's a pretty good review of this. From a huge critic. Like he's trying to watch things kind of for what they are,
Yeah.
but also just wants to give his like a valid opinion. So yeah, it's not a good movie, but it's a great watch.
Yeah, exactly. And and we'll get into other movies, I think, that fit into that kind of niche, because I think that Roadhouse very much fits into that niche of not a good movie, had a lot of fun watching it.
Yeah.
For Milla, this is her breakout role, and this is kind of what sends her career trajectory up. Gary Oldman, we talked about him previously and how much I enjoy his portrayal in the film. This is one of the least favorite movies he's ever done. He hates this movie. He said he said it was too wacky for his taste.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was doing it as a favor for Luc Besson, who helped get one of his first movies produced. And so he was like, yeah, I'll do this movie, whatever kind of thing. And it just not Gary Oldman style.
No, it makes sense because it wasn't like Zorg's motivations were very shallow,
Yes.
and he
Yeah.
plays roles where their motivations are so deep. Like he really understands like what it is like to be the character that he's becoming.
Right.
So that makes sense why you didn't enjoy doing that.
Yeah, that's a great point to make, that you definitely don't want to look under the surface this one.
Yeah.
This is like that movie that I watched on Amazon Prime with Chris Pratt, where it was like, I had fun. This is not a good movie, but it's a sci-fi that you just take it for what it is at face value. Do not think about it any further than that.
Yeah. This is like a comedy for adults, but it's almost a kids movie at the same time. It's like
Yeah.
somewhere, it's like confused in between. I
Well,
don't
it
know.
was written by a teenager, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's probably a fair assessment.
Yeah.
In terms of, I guess, stuff that happened subsequent to this film, Shrek 2 has the scene with the floating fast food is basically like kind of like framed exactly the same as
Okay.
Bruce Willis eating the food.
Oh,
there.
that's pretty funny.
Yeah, cool callback.
I
there.
really liked that actually, and like all the things in Bruce Willis's apartment.
Yeah.
Like he had a cool apartment. The way everything like folded.
Very dystopian, like
Yeah.
depressing apartment.
Yeah, and
but-
like I thought he actually killed the general and his
in the freezer.
yeah.
That's a point where you have to, like, at that point in time, you have to be like, okay, this movie is not serious, at all.
Yeah. But yeah, I really liked that floating
The little Chinese
Yeah,
restaurant
yeah.
fast food thing.
yeah, that was cool. Like Chris Tucker's character is still used in memes, and the main characters in this I knew from memes and like internet culture.
Yeah.
Not from anything else really. Like I don't see too much recreations of scenes or like references really. No one's really referencing it that much in like a big way that's noticeable. The way like Soylent Green is people
Right.
is referenced. It's not like that
It's
kind
because
of
of the
reference.
shallowness to the lore,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I think that's where like all the memes and the characters and like the outfits and their reactions turn into GIFs.
Yes.
And those are used as reaction GIFs. So that's where like there's a Bruce Willis nodding in like he's like, oh yeah, like in a, I don't know how to describe it, but it fits a certain thing perfectly.
Yeah, it's when like the really like drugged up dude does not understand what Bruce Willis is trying to get him to throw him. Like throw him the gun, and he throws like the two like
Yeah.
balls,
Yeah.
Miller's balls.
And he's like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's where that scene is from. Okay, yeah. So that's a really good little GIF meme that's used heavily still today.
Let's get into our personal reviews, the Parter Factor. I think we've probably discussed this enough here and there. Like, neither of us absolutely love this movie. I think I enjoyed it this time more than you because I've seen it here and there. Like, this is the first time I've probably watched it from start to finish. I've seen parts of it here and there so much from my teenage years watching it on TV. It's something that I haven't watched in a really long time or even watched start to finish ever, I think. But I had a lot of fun with it, and I went into it with the mindset of this is not going to be a serious movie. I don't have to think too hard. Especially, like, when they start talking about evil right at the beginning, your brain is going to go one of two places. It's going to go, this is stupid. They're literally just talking about evil with a capital E.
Yeah.
Or you have to think, like, I don't have to think too hard about this one. Let's just have fun and enjoy the movie.
Yeah.
And you gotta go the second route.
Yeah.
Or you're not gonna have fun.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know what? I went into it open, but if you didn't go into it intentionally open to whatever was gonna happen, then you might fall into this is stupid and like go watch something more serious or more just like straight comedy. I don't know. But yeah, like I liked it, didn't love it.
Annabelle was higher on it than you were, it sounds like.
Yeah, like she was watching it in like the perfect mindset, and it was like a Friday night and we were tired from the week. It was just a fun thing to enjoy, and like the characters were like a little crazy. We weren't like poking holes in the plot or like trying to think about anything.
Right.
We were just like we were just laughing along with it.
Yeah.
Once I got more into like I had to take a second and be like, okay, now I understand why, like what this movie is. I'll enjoy it in that way. And then I did, like, overall, it was good.
Have you ever seen Flash Gordon?
No, I've seen references to it, but I haven't actually watched it.
It's an awful movie that becomes really funny once your brain checks out.
Yeah, it's referencing Ted all the time. That movie, Ted.
It's something that we might have to do sometime as like going in knowing it's a bad movie, because this kind of almost harkens back to something like that, where this movie is almost mocking that, because Flash Gordon takes itself very seriously while also being god awful. Whereas this does not take itself seriously at all, and it becomes enjoyable because of that. Whereas Flash Gordon becomes enjoyable because of how serious it's taken itself.
Yeah. Just on that vein of thought, or train of thought, sorry. When you're looking at like comedy, there's so many different ways you can go, but having someone like a character like Michael Scott in The Office, who he takes himself seriously, but is just so ridiculous.
Right.
It's like the opposite of what Bruce Willis did, where he isn't super serious about it, and like it's still funny. It's like the writing is good. I don't know. Overall, like
it's the portrayals. I think it's a little bit the writing and a lot of the portrayals.
Yeah, like those reactions, they played it very well.
So do we want to talk our favorite scenes or quotes before we wrap things up? I don't have too much else to talk about. So.
Yeah.
Obviously, the explosion scene is pretty great in the big room where everything's blown up.
Yeah, you get some of Bruce Willis being a badass and funny, and you have Chris Tucker in there being like his ridiculous self.
Yeah, I love when they're in the opera part and like Chris Tucker is narrating everything happening.
Yeah, that was great. That was good comedy.
We're all gonna die.
Yeah.
And then again, when Bruce Willis just comes out like guns blaze everything, you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, here we go.
And then in that scene where he comes out guns blazing, he's right before he goes around the corner, he's like, we should send in someone to negotiate. And there's like a really nervous like security guard there, and he's like, I can't negotiate. And he's like, okay, I'll go. And then he's like, we're sending someone in to negotiate. And then he just comes around the corner and blows the alien's head off.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
That actually, I was reading, there's another Bruce Willis movie that comes out a couple years after this that has that exact same sequence. Oh, so, okay. It was in Taken. They say they're going to send somebody in to negotiate. He walks in and shoots somebody in the head.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
That's where the connection is there, which obviously Taken is connected to this movie through Luc Besson. So
It's another interesting connection with Luc Besson is Gary Oldman's characters in Leon the Professional and in The Fifth Element die in almost identical ways.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a good scene too, where you get Zord going back because he's pissed because he doesn't have the stones.
Yeah, and he's like, if you're gonna do something, you have to do it yourself. And then he goes back. And
he goes back knowing that his bomb is like moments away, not in really any rush either. Like, which is fun. He gets back with 5 seconds left, turns it off, and then he's looking for the stones, and he realizes that there's one alien left alive. The alien sees him and lights off their own bomb.
Yeah,
that was a pretty good end to that character.
Was good.
I like the scenes with Corbin Dallas in his taxi, where like Lilu comes crashing in, and he's just like, all right, this is what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And then he's like, the police are like right beside the taxi, and they're like, we're coming in, we're gonna do everything. And he just has that change of heart last minute. And then we get the cool car chase scene. That was a really fun scene.
Yeah.
Lilu's like splayed on the like back
the divider
thing. Divider thing. Like
the cops who are chasing him in that scene, they are at a McDonald's, which is like super futuristic kind of
very again corporate, like
and then near the end of the chase scene, they get crushed by a McDonald's truck.
They drive into the McDonald's truck.
Oh, I really liked the beginning when we're introduced to Corbin Dallas, and there's someone with he looks through the peephole. Someone knocks on his door. He looks through the peephole, and he just sees his hallway.
Right.
But there's a guy standing there with a picture printed and on a hat so that it looks exactly like it.
Yeah.
And then just his whole that character was a little he was pretty funny, very classic 90s kind of funny.
Yeah.
Where he's like, give me the cash. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, at that point in time, you got to be thinking like, this movie is not taking itself seriously.
Yeah.
I should not take this movie seriously.
Yeah.
Because that's a really wacky moment.
And even right away when you're in the pyramid and they're like, oh, there's a fifth element. It's like within the first minute of the movie, you know what the fifth element is, in a corny-ish way.
Yeah.
And the whole thing with Aziz, light. And what's his name? The 90210 guy?
Luke Perry?
Yeah, Luke Perry. He's writing down. He's checking off every time the guy says Aziz, light.
Yeah.
Just a good little bit of comedy there.
Yeah.
The part where he kisses her right away.
Yes.
And then she says in the divine language, never again without my permission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, shouldn't have done that. Yeah. And then a line that was very favored at the time from what I read was the whole Lilu eating the chicken. She's like, chicken good. She's learning English.
Right.
She puts in it's a
future,
very
Jetson style
yeah.
food creation, microwave.
Yeah, and then a full chicken pops out, all cooked. Yeah.
I mean, if I was recreated from the hand up, I'd probably be a little hungry too.
Yeah. Also, another stuttering humor was used at a certain point. I wrote it. I think it was the priest, and he's just like, it's a like it's just another connection a little bit to our last.
Right.
So I wrote actually disappointed.
Yes,
Just
that came up in this.
Yeah.
I noticed that
so
too.
I wasn't sure if that was fully intentional. I meant to look that up, but I didn't find anything on it specifically.
Yeah, I didn't see anything either. But
So there
yeah,
might have been a little nod to a fish named Wanda.
which is also like a foreign film technically too. So Luc Besson might have enjoyed that as well.
Yeah.
Are you classified as human? Negative. I am a meat popsicle.
Yeah, that is a huge line from that time too.
That's such a funny line.
Yeah, and I want to say like meat popsicle has been like humans as a meat popsicle. I don't know if that was the first time was it created in this, because I've heard that so many times.
I want to say yes. And you and I being kids of the 90s, like, probably don't have much more before that.
Yeah.
So like we just think of it as always being around. But it was probably that brought around that.
Chris Tucker like trying to hook up with
The stewardess, the
Yeah.
flight stewardess.
yeah, and she's like trying to say no, and he's like that whole scene was pretty funny. I don't remember like the details. Really.
Yeah, I don't remember the lines because that was one of those scenes where like we're seeing all the different perspectives of what's happening,
Yeah.
and then like they're happening. That kind of goes back to the sex scene in Fish Called Wanda too, where we have like a couple of different things happening, and it's like it's getting bigger and bigger to the climax of the scene.
Yeah.
So,
And the music, I think, was also building at that point, and then all these different things. Yeah, his mom.
oh, his mom was just like in what's it called in North by Northwest. She was the worst version of that mom. She was the irritating version of that mom.
Exactly, like the taken too far, or like the over the top mom. So when she talked to the president at the end, she's like,
that was a great way to end it.
Yeah. The president gets her on the phone, and he's like, "Is this
Corbin Dallas?"
Yeah, is this Mrs. Dallas or whatever?
Yeah.
And she's like, "Don't even try and trick me. The president is an idiot, and you don't sound like an idiot." And then she's like, if you're gonna lie to me, I might as well just go saran wrap myself to my bed and pretend my kid is smothering me, because she's like, he's basically completely distanced her. He doesn't like call her back or do
Which
anything.
is fair because she sounds like the worst.
Yeah. It's hard to tell how old his character is supposed to be, just because it's him and it's the 90s
and he's balding.
And he's
at
balding.
this point.
He's always been balding.
Yeah.
How
perpetually.
old was he?
97 was 25 years ago, so he would have been 42.
Really? Okay, yeah.
I would say that he looked older and younger than Cary Grant, even though Cary Grant was older North by Northwest. Cary Grant just has a decadence about him.
Yeah.
Whereas Bruce Willis, I think it's the balding thing. The balding thing makes you like not easy to age.
He's always portraying like not blue collar, but kind of like he's like the blue collar tough guy who's not super jacked or anything, and he's not like super refined. He's never refined, really.
No, never.
He's always like the character he was in
Die Hard. Yeah. He's like he's life's knocked him down a few pegs at this point. Like he's kind of accepted where he's at in his life, and then big disruptions happen.
Yeah.
I think that's most of the big funny parts that I like. It's kind of a movie where you have to watch it to get it.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be for everyone. I don't know. I think that's probably a good spot to wrap it up. Like, this isn't my favorite Bruce Willis movie by any means, but it's a good Bruce Willis portrayal. Like, what do you think your favorite Bruce Willis movie is? So here's the thing. For me, Pulp Fiction is my favorite movie that has Bruce Willis in it. But I think I revert to Die Hard probably for my favorite Bruce Willis movie, because it's just such a good movie.
It is.
And Bruce Willis isn't the main character of Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
That's definitely a Samuel Jackson, John Travolta film.
Yeah. I won't get into that, like who's the main character of that. Like, there's 3 stories going on.
Yeah.
So Bruce Willis is one of the main characters, but anyways,
he is.
It isn't like, his purely his movie, like the way.
I think it's Samuel Jackson's movie.
Yeah. That's fair.
And again, John Travolta, because John Travolta's in multiple stories. He's in 3 of them, I think.
Is he in all 3?
Yeah, he's in 3.
They all connect, but
yeah, because he's the only one in the story with what's her name, anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I go favorite Bruce Willis movies. I go Die Hard, then I go Pulp Fiction because it's less his movie. This one probably makes it into
I liked
the top 10.
Armageddon quite a bit. Like
Yeah.
it was pretty fun.
I would put 12 Monkeys over that, I think.
Yeah, 12 Monkeys is one that like it's such a 90s movie, like the feel of it.
Yeah.
And I just loved watching that, especially with Brad Pitt. Like
It's a great Brad Pitt portrayal as
yeah,
well.
Yeah.
I think we've paid a pretty good tribute to Bruce Willis here. We're definitely going to do more Bruce Willis movies on this podcast because I alone am a huge Bruce Willis fan. So I'm gonna
everyone
be for
like he was at the top in the 90s at certain points.
Yeah.
And he was a big part of the 80s and 90s, and he kept his career going. It's like he's known about this aphasia growing for the past few years, and he was just pumping out as many movies as he could maybe he was trying to like keep his mind strong, but he couldn't focus on like major roles.
Yeah, I really don't know. It'd be interesting to know what his motive was behind putting out all the direct.
Probably just money, but which is like valid. If I knew that in like 10 years I was gonna be no longer able to be in movies, I would get in as many as I can just to make like.
Especially for someone who talked about how much he enjoyed movies in the past. Like, he did this movie purely for fun. Yeah. Like, he wasn't expecting to make any money. He did have a deal to get part of the money that the movie made, which is a pretty big risk for a movie with a $90 million budget already. It's pretty out there as well, very polarizing. So he was taking a big risk on this one.
It did make, what was it, 270 million
something
or something like that?
Well over its budget.
Yeah, and over his career, his movies were like a few billion.
Oh yeah,
brought in a few billion.
I imagine the syndication for the Die Hard series alone makes him $1 million or more a year.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I want to end things.
Yeah.
So our next April movie is an animation film. I'm really excited about doing an older animation film. And you and I need to iron out which one we want to do. I'm kind of looking at the list now. I think we've kind of narrowed it down between a few. Princess Monarchy, The Iron Giant, and Road to El Dorado. I think were the three big ones that we were talking about. Personally, I'm a little bit more persuaded towards The Iron Giant, I think.
I feel like it is a movie that a lot of millennials have watched. Like, a lot of millennials have watched and loved. So maybe it would be really good for either older viewers who didn't necessarily watch it, or the youngest of our listeners of the Generation Z and A or whatever, Gen Z and...
Yeah, a little bit of a nostalgia hit.
Wait, Gen A is now. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, it's a nostalgia hit. So, like, I would like to watch it, like, in a critical way, So
I don't think I've ever seen it from start to finish. And if I had, I don't think I enjoyed it as a kid because I don't think I understood it. And I think that it's something that it actually might hold up better as an adult than as a child.
Yeah. I'm also really interested in the Princess Mononoke or whatever. Mononoke. But is that Studio Ghibli?
Yes.
Yeah, because I've seen, I think, 2 Studio Ghibli, and they're great. I watched Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away.
Yeah, I really want to see Spirited Away at some point.
It's so interesting. It's so different. It's a crazy area of film. It's interesting. I like it. I'm not, like, super into them, but being introduced into, like, Japanese or like that style of animation,
right?
Anime, I guess, almost like it's in that realm.
Yeah, it's anime.
So yeah,
I think
I don't know what qualifies as anime. I guess we might have to learn and watch Mononoke or whatever.
Yep. So I guess we haven't finalized it yet. So if you have any thoughts, let us know in the comments, and we'll make our decision maybe based on that.
Yeah, that'd be great if. Someone other than your mom could help us out with that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Maybe she has some good recommendations, though.
Yeah,
I know she listens, though.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's it. So this is coming out right before the Easter long weekend. So hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Yeah.